Welcome to Open Arms, an honest conversation about firearms. Hey everyone, I'm your host, Brian Lockerman. We all remember the days of the pandemic when they shut our lives down. We couldn't go to movie theaters, restaurants, malls, you name it, we couldn't go there. And we couldn't even go to our own church to worship. It was a bad time. But you know what? There was a handful of people that stood up and said, no, I'm not going to comply. And today, I have one of those people with me. I have Pastor Rob McCoy from Godspeak Church. Welcome to the show, Rob.
Thanks, Brian. This is fun.
I know, it's great. Rob, you must have gone through a lot those days, right?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't pleasant. It was irritating. You have the governor of the state who obviously doesn't know the Constitution and decides to declare that the church is non-essential. Strip clubs were essential.
Yeah, exactly.
Cannabis distributors were essential. Liquor stores were essential. But the church apparently wasn't essential. And a complete violation of the First Amendment, first 16 words. So,
yes.
Yeah, it was upsetting. And then the fear-mongering.
Oh, yeah.
If you had a different narrative than what the legacy media that was funded by Big Pharma was putting forward, you'd be censored.
Yes.
So they said we couldn't meet in person. We had to meet over the internet. But if we didn't follow what they wanted us to talk about, they banned us from YouTube.
It's just amazing. Now, were you getting fined back in the days?
Yeah, so what ended up happening is the governor decided during our Holy Week, which is Palm Sunday to Easter Sunday, that we weren't allowed to meet and we weren't allowed to sing. We weren't allowed to gather. And we decided we were going to do that because he had just finished marching in the BLM riots where, there was burning and looting, and he was shoulder to shoulder, no mask. He had just had a dinner at the French Laundry.
Exactly.
And 75% of the businesses that were burned and looted were Jewish owned and targeted. And I knew at this point it had nothing to do with the virus. This is politically motivated. Mm-hmm. So we opened and stayed open, and 3 of the 5 supervisors in our county agreed to get funds to get an attorney to put forward a restraining order on me and named me and 1,000 congregants or visitors. And we could get a citation, which if you had a concealed weapon permit, you'd lose it. If you had an NROTC scholarship, you'd lose it. It was a serious citation.
Oh, yeah.
And they tried to get the sheriff to enforce it, and they found a political and predictive judge. So I was brought before the judge on contempt charges twice and found guilty. And they said every time the doors of the church were open, it was a $3,000 fine.
Oh, man.
So we just, in our own math, calculated just to see what we were going to be up against, and we figured it was about $300,000.
Wow.
But I told the judge in the second hearing, I said, Judge, I'll see the inside of a jail cell before you see a dime of that money.
There you go.
And the county dropped it. I mean, a virus that has a 99.7% survival rate. Yep. They shuttered our schools. The elderly died alone. The abused were quarantined with their abusers. 65% of our small businesses just were devastated.
Done.
Many won't reopen.
I know that. It was horrible. It was horrible to see that. But you know what? It was people like you that just stood your ground, and I appreciate that, Rob. I mean, it really, you made a difference. There's no question about it.
Well, I appreciate the encouragement.
Oh, of course. Now, during that time, were you getting any kind of like death threats or people protesting and things like that?
Yeah, it comes with the territory.
Of course.
They had pumped up so much fear that everyone thought that, it was going to be a super spreader event and everybody was going to die. Well, I was mayor pro tem of the city of Thousand Oaks when we'd had 12 young people killed in the Borderline country dance hall. 2 of them were from our congregation. I became mayor 7 or 8 days later. I love this city. I have served this city. I in no way would put anyone in jeopardy. We did our homework. We knew the virus. At first, you didn't know the severity of it, but then we had the Diamond Princess, and we had the data. We started to look at the data, and they were calling everything a COVID death, and they weren't distinguishing between dying with COVID or from COVID.
Yeah.
And real quick, when I was brought before the judge on contempt charges, at the time we had a little over 100,000 deaths attributed, we had a little over 100 deaths attributed to COVID in our county.
Mm-hmm.
And we did a FOIA, Freedom of Information, and we found out that only 2 died from COVID.
Yeah.
The rest were with. The youngest COVID death, a 43-year-old male, died of a fentanyl overdose, tested positive for COVID death. Guy in a car accident, crushed lungs, tested positive for COVID death. This is the gimmick that they were doing. And they were making money hand over fist, and they were scaring the daylights out of people.
Exactly. And again, you stood your ground. And you, the viewer out there, I'm sure some of you have experienced the same thing. If you had, please, write us. Talk to us about your experience as well. I know there's more people out there in the world like Rob McCoy here. And it's people like you that make a difference. It's people like you out there that make a difference. I really do appreciate it. Again, I keep saying that, but I do.
Well, again, thank you. I look at it as, when I knew I was going up against contempt charges and I'd have to, they were going to enforce it that Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, the seriousness was bearing down on us.
Yeah.
And I had a terrible pain in my shoulder, and I went up to my in-laws' lake house just to get away from all the noise. And I couldn't get any rest. The pain was so bad. And I left my family up there because I didn't want to put them in harm's way. And because it's up near Sacramento. And so I came down, but I was in the airport, and I called the attorney, and I said, look, if I violate that restraining order, tell me everything I can lose. And he gave an exhaustive list that was a legal pad and a half of consequences.
Oh, man.
And I said, I'll call you right back. And I called my wife, and I said, this is what we can lose. And she was, basically, I'd rather be a widow than be married to a coward. I mean, I'm all in, honey. She's amazing.
That's awesome.
My kids were thrilled because we were contending for their future.
Yeah.
My staff was all in. We have 15 elders. And I met with them, and I said, look, fellas, you have the same fiduciary responsibility I do. You can lose everything I can lose. And our vote has to be unanimous. I'm planning on violating the restraining order tomorrow. If the vote isn't unanimous, I completely understand. In front of you is my letter of resignation. I can't live with myself or pastor this church if I don't do this.
Yeah.
And the vote was 14-0 because one guy was an attorney and he couldn't vote to break the law, and we needed him to represent us.
Gotcha.
So the pain in my shoulder went away. And all the fear dissipated because when you finally realize everything on that list is irrelevant, my liberty and my freedom is of utmost importance, and I'll do whatever's necessary to defend it.
Absolutely. Well spoken. I love hearing that. Now, Rob, you told me too that when this was occurring, your first responders of your congregation stepped up and they started a security program. Is that correct?
Yeah, so we had Antifa come out. We had some graffiti and some vandalism that occurred, and we'd had some threats,
I can
viable threats. So because the press and pretty much all of Ventura County, except for 2 publications, were paid by the government to carry the COVID narrative.
Mm-hmm.
So we're in opposition to the COVID narrative, so they're going to report adversely. And so we're the enemy.
Yeah.
And people are coming out, and, every day I'd come to church, there'd be somebody there berating me or yelling or wanting to throw down. and so they developed, and it was organic, but they developed a security detail, 3 rings of security. They all went through training.
Good.
And we wanted to make sure who was carrying, who wasn't. Mm-hmm. So if anything suspicious even came remotely close to the church, there was somebody placed upon them and walking with them.
Yeah.
If they got into the second ring, we closed in, and we found out more information, and we started to realize who they were, and if there was a suspicious backpack or anything like that, we took care of it. I mean, it's our property. You're welcome to come, but we have a responsibility to keep people safe.
Exactly.
Well, not safe, but protected.
Exactly. And it's a shame that he has to do something like that. For people just to come worship, you have to worry about your security. It shouldn't be that way, but it is, unfortunately.
Well, I would also say it's pretty wonderful to live in a country where we can defend ourselves.
Exactly.
Because if you don't have the Second Amendment, you
You
won't
don't
have the
have-
First.
You're right about that. You know, Rob, I have a story that will blow your mind right now.
Bring it
Can
on.
Can I share you a story? I'm going to share everybody's story out there too. We had a training class at about 8 not too long ago in our safety training class. And they were on some downtime, and I was listening in on their conversation. One of the guys was telling the group, we should get rid of the Pledge of Allegiance altogether. We should not sing the national anthem at sporting events anymore. We should not be teaching our kids about American history. We should get rid of all the amendments, and we should teach kids current affairs. They are a them, they are whatever they want to be. So, you know, I'm sitting there biting my tongue going, no, I got to chime in. I walked over to the guy. I said, let me ask you this. So you want to get rid of the Pledge of Allegiance? Mm-hmm. You want to get rid of our national anthem? Mm-hmm. And you want to definitely get rid of our amendments, correct? That's right. And not teach our kids American history. I said, what are you doing here? I'm getting training on my firearm. Really? Do you own that firearm? I do. Well, guess what? The Second Amendment allows you to do that. He goes, well, I'm not going to go shoot up malls and schools like other people will. So you're telling me this other group will, but you won't. I don't know what they're going to do. So you're saying you're allowed, but they're not. That's right. The hypocrisy. I seriously was just shaking my head going, what am I listening to?
Yeah.
You know? And I mean, it blew my mind.
The arguments become comical.
Yeah.
You know, the idea of banning guns because of quote unquote mass shootings. I look at it as, should we ban pencils for falling, test scores?
Exactly.
And here's another one. If guns kill, this inanimate object kills,
Mm-hmm.
then why are we giving drug addicts in San Francisco needles?
Yeah. Right. Right.
The hypocrisy is unbelievable.
I know it.
And yet, you're going to tell me that the only people who get to carry guns is going to be the government.
Yeah.
And we're to trust them now?
Uh-huh. No,
After what they just did in this last go-round?
Yeah. No, thank you.
Yeah, the draconian, tyrannical, no, I
Yeah. So
wise gun ownership.
absolutely. So back to your security program at your church. I believe they're called sheepdogs. Is that correct?
Yeah, sheepdogs.
Sheepdogs. That's awesome, man. That's great that they're getting the safety training, and they're getting now. They get some self-defense training tue. Isn't Russell Reynolds doing
Yeah,
something?
Russell Reynolds.
Guy's my man. He's been on the show a couple times now. He actually did a couple events with us as well.
And congregates get trained.
Oh, really?
Yeah, we're training anyone who we have a entry-level class. I want everyone equipped.
There you go. That's what I always say. And I always tell people this too. Even though you don't think you're going to purchase that gun or own that gun or bring that gun home to your house, it's still good to have training. It's still good to have safety training on a firearm. It's still good to have self-defense training. You never know when you might need it. And also situational awareness is key. That too. I'm sure your guys are doing that at your church, watching people closely coming in and seeing who's not too right, kind of shaky people come walking in the door.
There's been 2 incidences where the way they responded was remarkable.
Really?
And it's almost as though you didn't even see it happen. They just took care of it so quickly.
Oh, that's great. That's awesome.
And one guy was just off his rocker.
Yeah.
He's just a couple hot dogs short of a picnic.
Yeah, there you go. So, Rob, now, you also had a political career, correct? And is there any things in the future you have in play for that?
Am I going to run for office again?
Yeah.
Currently, the answer is I am not considering it at all.
Okay.
But I never was considering running for office before I ran for office.
Yeah.
So, that's up to the Lord. But yes, I ran for the state assembly. I won the primary, lost the general. Jackie Irwin vacated her council seat. She was my opponent. She went on to be in the assembly. So I ran for her vacated seat and won. And then I won re-election. I became mayor for a season. And in my last year on the council for that term is when all this went down with COVID. And I resigned my seat knowing that the council would censure me. and they had enough on their plate with what the
Yeah.
governor was throwing down, and I was going to be inundated. So I stepped down from the office that I worked hard to get elected to, and I was going to win by overwhelming numbers because we had just gone through the borderline shooting,
Oh, yeah.
and I was the mayor dedicating the park, and I was with the families and doing my best to serve the community, and it was a season of service,
Uh-huh.
and I'm proud of it.
Oh,
But but to serve the community, I needed to defend the people who didn't seem to have a voice because, especially the county and the state, they were way out over their
yeah.
skis.
Yeah. What you're a great man. What you're doing, it's just such an asset to our community. Now, real quick question for you. When this all was taking place, the whole thing, getting all the fines and stuff like that, did people step up in the congregation? Did the people start donating and helping the cause out? Did they all come together?
So the fines were first of all, the judge never put a due date on the fines,
Oh, gotcha. Okay.
and he knew he was wrong, but he wanted to retire, and he just wanted to drink with an umbrella on a beach somewhere.
There you go.
He was a good guy. He just
Yeah.
didn't want to be on the front page of every paper in the country. And then the county realized they didn't want to go to the discovery phase
Hmm.
because Dr. Levin's not going to be able to justify what he did to our community, especially keeping his winery open while
Yeah.
everyone else's businesses were shut.
Yeah. Right.
His Form 700, there's still questions about that. I mean, there's a lot of funky stuff.
Oh, yeah.
But what was spectacular, and not in regards to the fines, but when we were threatened, me and 1,000 congregants
Hmm.
with the citation, when I showed up that Sunday, there were probably over 1,000 people who had come from all over the country and the state. And they said, "We'll take the fines. You worship in peace."
Wow. See,
That's America.
That's amazing. You're right. That's America.
Yeah.
That is absolutely
I, I,
awesome.
w- I, w- I was, I almost couldn't preach. I was so choked up.
Oh, I could imagine. That's fantastic to hear
Yeah.
that.
It was precious.
That is awesome. Okay, so what? Give us the address of the church. I want people to go there. Where is it?
Well, thank you. It's 320 Via Las Brisas in Newbury Park. It's the old YMCA up in Dos Vientos.
Okay, anyone out there, if you get a chance, you've got to go to Godspeak Church. It is worth it. It is a great group of people, and you got Rob here as the pastor. Guy's amazing. He has done such amazing things for everyone in our community.
I have to tell you, it's the sweetest congregation of people. I mean, I couldn't be busier, and the things I adore. As a pastor of a church of a couple hundred, well, the church just exploded.
Uh-huh.
And in 18 months, we baptized twice as many people as the attendance of the church was 18 months ago.
Wow.
So it's exponentially grown, and everyone stepped up, and there's ministries going everywhere that I knew nothing about because these people serve and they love their community.
Yeah.
And now we have 9, 11, and 1 o'clock services
Wow.
and a Saturday night. We just there's no more room.
Well, I'll tell you this much, Rob. You're well spoken of no matter where we go. It's funny. First of all, I had a lot of guests on the show from your church. Second of all, when we do these events, people always say, "Hey, Rob McCoy, Godspeak Church." We're always talking about it. We just did an event the other day at VCGO. And they were talking about you. That is great to hear because that means you're making a difference. People really appreciate you and love what you're doing.
Well, we're all carrying a corner of the stretcher, and Winston Churchill said, "The man was cursed to have been born in uninteresting times." And that's not true for you and me.
Yeah.
I mean, this is probably one of the greatest threats to the republic that we've known in the history of this nation.
That is true.
And what's transpiring right now, and the attacks on all of our inalienable rights, is unprecedented.
Mm-hmm.
And so folks are rising up, and this is the season of the citizen. The elites, with this World Economic Forum and Yuval Harari and Klaus Schwab, and people are tired of that. They just want to be left alone, and we want our country back.
I agree.
And it's the rise of the citizen, and people are being inspired and getting excited. So I I want to thank all the folks out there that make it possible. Otherwise, I'd be going on a long, lonely walk.
Yeah, that's true.
And everywhere I go, I run into people who say, we watch from a distance and we support your church, or we're praying for you, and we're in this together.
Absolutely, 100%. Another one I wanted to ask you about too. One thing about our show, Open Arms, we really stress on the importance of family values.
Yeah.
I feel that we're losing that, and I want to bring that back. I feel that a lot of the mental health with our youth is due to not having their parents there to talk to, not being able to talk to their counselors. Now, are you experiencing any of that, or do you feel that your congregation is really family oriented?
Our congregation's doing a good job. A number of families homeschool. We're finding in our public school, especially in the Conejo Valley Unified School District, some severe indoctrination. There's a really heavy transgender movement in LGBTQ where, the sexualizing of our children. Let them be kids.
Exactly.
Let them be kids. And now you've got it to where parents, your child can get a surgery without a parent consent.
I know.
And you have hormone blockers and chemical castration that they don't even give to serial rapists in prison because they think it's inhumane, but we'll give it to our children.
Yeah.
I mean, who's running the show here, and how did they get in power?
I know it.
And here's the other one. What is a woman? I mean, men have now dominated female sports.
I know it.
The patriarchy has taken over female sports.
Yep.
The biological male who won the NC2A in the 500-yard freestyle.
Yep.
I swam the 500 free in college. My time was faster than his. Had I decided to transition to a female, I could have been an NC2A champion.
Yeah, you should have, Rob.
No,
I'm kidding.
No, I would have lost. It's not worth it.
I'm joking.
But the stupidity of this.
I know it.
That's the woman of the year.
I know.
And where are the feminists?
Yep.
And what's that saying to our daughters? Go ahead and work really hard, but somebody who is biologically stronger is just going to dominate.
I know.
And break facial bones in MMA fighting. It's just
it's
sick.
It is. I agree 100%. It's just out of control.
Yeah.
It really is. Yeah. And again, I mean, I remember the days growing up as a kid. I went to school. We said the Pledge of Allegiance. We learned about American history. I went home and had family dinners with my family. Got to talk to my mom and dad. They cared about what my sister and I did. They talked to us about our day. It was that family unit. And we were being taught what America is and what we stood for. And I want to bring that back.
You talked about sheepdogs.
Yeah.
And I do like the term.
I do too.
And you look at police officers, you look at military personnel, they carry a weapon.
Mm-hmm.
And they're there to protect the sheep.
Mm-hmm.
They're the sheepdog.
Mm-hmm.
A sheepdog has more in common with a wolf than it does with a sheep by nature. And that dog will bite you unless it's governed by the master.
Yeah.
And what folks don't realize is when you're sworn into office, if you're in the military or you're an officer in a sheriff's department or police force, or you are an elected official, you swear to defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why is because the 7 articles of the Constitution and the 27 amendments constrain police and military and elected officials. They must remain within the constraints of those 7 articles. And when they step out and they turn the weapons against the sheep, and they weaponize government like the DOJ and the FBI, and here's what I would say to police officers and sheriffs and military personnel. You love this country. And I would say this to you as well and anyone else out there. You love this country, and you want to see it survive. Well, then study the Constitution, because how can you defend something you know nothing about?
Right. Well spoken. Yes, you're right. Yes.
Everyone should know the 7 articles.
I agree.
And they should know the 27 amendments. At least know the first 10.
I know. You ever see that? I don't know if you've seen these guys on YouTube who go out in the streets and ask our kids in college and stuff like that. That's the easiest questions about our country.
Yeah.
About the amendments. have no clue. They're clueless.
But if you're going to give somebody a gun and give them power, they better.
I agree with
I
that.
would say our county needs to provide constitutional training classes
Yeah.
for our officers.
Yeah, I agree. That's a good point. 100%. Rob, this has been great. I mean, seriously, just listening.
You're really good at this.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, thanks, buddy. I appreciate that. Well, listen, it's been a great conversation. I'd like to even have you come back maybe another day, talk about some more subject matters if you don't mind.
I'm happy to cure anyone's insomnia.
There you go. So again, one more time, the address of the church for the people.
320 Via Las Brisas, Newbury Park.
Okay.
It's Godspeak.com.
Godspeak.com.
And I'm RobMcCoy.us if you want to follow me on Instagram.
RobMcCoy.us. Everybody, again, if you're in the area, please go to Godspeak. It is an amazing congregation. You won't be disappointed. You got this guy here. This guy is the man.
Yeah, thanks, man.
I can't thank you enough for everything that you've done.
Likewise.
Seriously. I
Bless
really
you.
do. All right, everyone. That's our show for today. I think this is fantastic having Rob on the show. Please go check out Godspeak. It'll be worth it. And again, one more thing I want to leave you guys with. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram, openarms.tv. Subscribe on YouTube, Open Arms TV. Ring the bell, like us, comment. I'd like you to write in some comments about today's episode, what your thoughts are. And always remember, safety, family, and the Second Amendment. See you later.
Boom.